What's up, moviegoers? Welcome to the Markio Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony. Now, on today's episode, I will be talking about the 92nd Academy Awards, giving my predictions on nominees. Now, the nominations were announced on January 13th, 2020, and the award ceremony is taking place February 9th, 2020. There is no host this year, just like the 91st Academy Awards. Now, once I tell you who the nominees are, I'll be giving my predictions and then moving on to the next category. However, there are certain categories where I will be talking about a little bit more because it's just very interesting, to say the least. So let's get started. There are 9 movies up for Best Picture this year, and those movies are Ford Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. My pick here, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Up next, we have Best Director. The nominees are Bong Joon-ho for Parasite, Sam Mendes for 1917, Todd Phillips for Joker, Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, and Quentin Tarantino for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, before I give my prediction on this category, I do want to say something about it. I know there's a lot of talk about diversity and not much African Americans that are nominated or women that are nominated in categories. Now, I have to say that Greta Gerwig for Little Women should have been nominated for Best Director, and the person that I would take out of this category for Best Director is Todd Phillips for Joker. Listen, Joker's getting too much praise, and it's not a great movie. There, I said it. I didn't like it. I didn't do anything for me. It's just an overwhelming fan-based movie that needed to get nominated for God knows what reason. There are better movies out there that should have been nominated, should have gotten 12 nominations, and Joker should not have gotten anything. Maybe for Best Actor, and that's it. But other than that, Greta Gerwig should have been in this category and not Todd Phillips. So my pick to win for Best Director, though, is Sam Mendes for 1917. Up next, we have Best Actor. The nominees are Antonio Banderas for Pain and Glory, Leonardo DiCaprio for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Adam Driver for Marriage Story, Joaquin Phoenix for Joker, and Jonathan Pryce, The Two Popes. There's no Christian Bale in this category. He should be in here. Jonathan Pryce shouldn't be in here. That's a surprise. Adam Driver shouldn't be in here. That's a surprise. But of course, we know who's going to win, and that's going to be Joaquin Phoenix for Joker. Should he win? No. Is he going to? Sadly, yes, he will. But if I had to pick who would win in this category, like I said, it's going to be Joaquin Phoenix for Joker. If I had to pick someone else to win it, I'd actually pick Antonio Banderas for Pain and Glory. Up next, we have Best Actress. The nominees are Cynthia Erivo for Harriet, Scarlett Johansson for Marriage Story, Saoirse Ronan for Little Women, Charlize Theron for Bombshell, and Renee Zellweger for Judy. Now, for this category, I'm going to pick Renee Zellweger as Judy. I've said it before that she's going to sweep this award season, and it's likely that she'll take the Oscar in this category. But I'm very happy and very glad to see that Cynthia Erivo as Harriet is in this category because she did a great job, and she's well deserving of this nomination. Up next, we have Best Supporting Actor. The nominees are Tom Hanks, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Anthony Hopkins, The Two Popes, Al Pacino, The Irishman, Joe Pesci, The Irishman, and Brad Pitt, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This category is one of the most perfect categories I've seen in a long time. It's great actors for great movies, and the only thing I'm iffy about is Anthony Hopkins in The Two Popes. Other than that, you could have had someone else in here like Daniel Craig for Knives Out or something like that. But if I had to pick, I would say that Brad Pitt takes the award for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Next up, we have Best Supporting Actress. Kathy Bates for Richard Jewell, Laura Dern for Marriage Story, Scarlett Johansson for Jojo Rabbit, Florence Pugh for Little Women, and Margot Robbie for Bombshell. The surprise in this category, there is no Jennifer Lopez for Hustlers. Granted, she has been getting praise for that role, and she was nominated for a Golden Globe and a SAG, but she was not nominated for an Oscar, so she's the surprise, snub in this category. But the surprise person who did get in this category was Kathy Bates for Richard Jewell. I have to say that while Scarlett Johansson is nominated for Best Actress for Marriage Story, she's also nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Jojo Rabbit. Listen, don't do that. If you know the person's not going to win it, don't give them the nomination. I mean, granted, yes, it's a great thing that you're nominated. It's a privilege. But her slot should have been given to someone else like Jennifer Lopez. It would have been maybe a little bit better, but seeing Scarlett Johansson nominated twice in one night is great. Okay, I understand that, but other than that, give it to somebody else. It's not like she's going to win it because she's not, because my pick for Best Supporting Actress is going to be Laura Dern for Marriage Story. Up next, Best Original Screenplay. We have Knives Out for Rian Johnson, Marriage Story, Noah Baumbach, 1917, Sam Mendes and Christy Wilson Cairns, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood from Quentin Tarantino, and Parasite from Bong Joon-ho and Han Jin-won. My pick, Quentin Tarantino for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Up next, we have Best Adapted Screenplay, The Irishman, Steve Zalian, Jojo Rabbit, Taika Waititi, Joker, Todd Phillips and Scott Silver, Little Women, Greta Gerwig, The Two Popes, Anthony McCartan. Now, while Greta Gerwig didn't get nominated for Best Director, she did get nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, and I'm happy to say that she's going to take this award for Best Adapted Screenplay for Little Women. So Greta Gerwig is getting her Oscar this year for Little Women. So that's my pick in this category. Up next, we have Best Animated Feature Film. The nominees are How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, I Lost My Body, Klaus, Missing Link, and Toy Story 4. Of course, there's no, Lion King, which is good. Frozen 2 should have been in this, but it's not. And my pick actually is going to be Toy Story 4. Best International Film is the next category. We have Corpus Christi, which is a Polish movie, Honeyland, which is Turkish, Les Miserables in French, Pain and Glory in Spanish, and Parasite in Korean. Of course, my pick for Best International Feature Film is going to be Parasite in Korean, and Bong Joon-ho is going to win his first Oscar, ladies and gentlemen, which is very good to see. Up next, we have Best Documentary Feature. The nominees are American Factory, The Cave, The Edge of Democracy, For Sama, and Honeyland. My pick, Honeyland. Up next, Best Documentary Short Subject. The nominees are In the Absence, Learning to Skateboard in a War Zone If You're a Girl, Life Overtakes Me, St. Louis Superman, and Walk Run Cha Cha. I'm going to pick St. Louis Superman. Up next, we have Best Live Action Short Film. The nominees are Brotherhood, Nefta Football Club, The Neighbor's Window, Saria, and A Sister. My pick, Brotherhood. Best Animated Short Film. The nominees are The Sarah, Hair Love, Kit Bull, Memorable, and Sister. My pick, Sister. Best Original Score. The nominees are Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. My pick, Joker. Up next, Best Original Song. The nominees are Toy Story 4, Rocket Man, Breakthrough, Frozen 2, and Harriet. My prediction, Rocket Man. Up next, Best Sound Editing. The nominees are Ford Ferrari, Joker, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. My pick, 1917. Up next, Best Sound Mixing. The nominees are Ad Astra, Ford Ferrari, Joker, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. My pick, 1917. Up next, Best Production Design. The nominees are The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. My pick, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Up next, Best Cinematography. The nominees are The Irishman, Joker, The Lighthouse, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, for this category, it's very tough because we have Roger Deakins for 1917 and Robert Richardson for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood going at it in the same category. But I have to say that Roger Deakins takes his second Oscar for 1917, so my pick is Roger Deakins. Up next, we have Best Makeup and Hairstyling. The nominees are Bombshell, Joker, Judy, Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, and 1917. And my prediction, Joker. Best Costume Design. The nominees are The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. My pick, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Best Film Editing. The nominees are Ford Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, and Parasite. My prediction, Ford Ferrari. And lastly, we have Best Visual Effects. The nominees are Avengers Endgame, The Irishman, The Lion King, 1917, and Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. My prediction, Avengers Endgame. So as you can see, there are a lot of interesting nominees in here. There are a lot of surprises, a lot of snubs. And, I gave my critique on certain things, and some of these movies are just, perfect for this, and some of these movies are not. It's going to be interesting to see what movies win, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Academy gets it right, or will they get it wrong? Who knows? I'm hoping there's a surprise this year, one big surprise, but basically mostly all the acting categories are already, predicted. Best Director's up in the air, and Best Picture's definitely up in the air, so I'm very curious to see what happens. And like I said, with this whole diversity thing, with the African Americans not being nominated, or with, more women being nominated, let me give you some example. 12 Years a Slave won Best Picture. Moonlight won Best Picture. Jordan Peele won an Oscar for writing. Spike Lee finally won his Oscar for writing. So you can't tell me that, there hasn't been any African Americans that, are not nominated or anything, And if you're saying that there's not much diversity, stop. Please stop, because you don't know what you're talking about. And you're saying that, more women need to be nominated for Best Director. I mean, Catherine Bigelow won Best Director for The Hurt Locker, and that was a great movie. And I'll admit, Greta Gerwig should have been nominated for Little Women and not Todd Phillips for Joker, because everybody else in that category is great with their film. Joker's not a great movie, but it's very interesting to see that, certain people are complaining about the Oscars. If you're complaining about it, don't watch it. It's just mumbo jumbo bullshit talk just to get people going and agitated. And if you think the Academy Awards or this industry is annoying you, then don't pay it any attention. Because I, for one, am part of this industry. I am a filmmaker. I enjoy what I do, and I have opinions. And certain people can't take certain opinions, but that's how this industry is. You have to have a thick skin. If you don't have a thick skin, and if you can't speak up for yourself, and you can't give your opinion, then this isn't the industry for you. But what you have to do and what you have to say, your opinion matters. You have to have a thick skin, and you have to take criticism. That's this industry. And whatever anybody else is saying about everything with all these nominations and the diversity, stop, because it's annoying. Every single year it happens. Every single year. Once that stops, then maybe the Oscars will be enjoyable again. But, who knows what will happen now. If you have an opinion, great, say it. If you critique something, great, say it. Just make sure you have your facts right before you open your mouth. Now remember, these 92nd Academy Awards take place on February 9th, 2020, and do not have a host this year. So it's very interesting to see what the format will be. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today's episode. I'm your host, Anthony, and you've been listening to the Markio Podcast.